Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Nashville Congressman Jim Cooper, talking about what's going on in Washington these days. Congressman, it seems every week for the past several weeks there have been multiple announcements by your Democratic colleagues, particularly those you served with for a long time in leadership, that they won't be seeking re-election next year. Isn't this another sign that your party is going to be, particularly in the House, in the minority next year? Isn't this the way historically it's always been, that the party in power in the White House loses seats in the Congress, and you're the party in power in the White House, so you're going to lose seats, you're going to be a minority again?
Well, Pat, as you know, every election cycle, there are on average about 17 plus retirements. I'm not sure we've really exceeded that number, but a number of folks in Democratic leadership are up in years. Some of them are pushing 80, and I think a number of those are naturally going to call it quits. So we'll see if it's an unusual number.
Does it give you any ideas about, or second thoughts about running again?
No, I'm running hard. But I'm only 67, so I'm a spring chicken compared to most of my colleagues.
Good, that makes me feel good too. I just turned 70. In addition to what's going on with people retiring, for a first-year chief executive, President Biden has had an extraordinary decline in his popularity. He started out well up into the 50s. Now he's down in the low 40s. What's happened?
Well, the Afghan withdrawal really hurt. And in general, most presidents start out at a relative high, and then the realities of governing come into place. COVID has been a real downer for everybody. Nobody wanted an Omicron. We didn't want a Delta. But there's no way to stop the disease unless people are more compliant with getting vaccinated and wearing masks. So that's been a tough issue that most presidents have never had to face.
If the president was a part of this conversation, what would you tell him he needs to do to improve his numbers?
Well, Fox is never going to like him. They're always going to criticize. So you have one of the nation's strongest networks right there built in as an antagonist. And, you know, the Democratic way is to be self-critical and so idealistic that sometimes we make the best the enemy of the good. There's so many good things in these bills, like we've already cut childhood poverty in half in America, and who knows about that? But see, it's disguised as this technical thing called the childhood tax credit, and a lot of folks don't even know that it's happened. Every president for years has promised an infrastructure bill. No president has been able to deliver, and Joe Biden delivered, because he knows the system so well he was able to get it through. But Trump promised one for years. We got nothing. You know, previous presidents promised, couldn't deliver. Now we finally have one, and that's going to strengthen America for generations.
Well, you mentioned the infrastructure bill, which was passed on a bipartisan basis. You announced this week, I think, $1 billion plus, which is the first down payment on that money coming to Tennessee. How much of that money is going to be coming to your district? And what will people in Nashville see about this, and how soon? Are you concerned the Republican administration might not spend as much in this area?
Well, I am worried about that always. I want to be alert, make sure that not only we get our fair share of the money, but that it's not wasted, that it's properly spent. But let me put this in perspective for you. Very few people know this, Pat, but Davidson County, Nashville, individual citizens and local governments have received already $9.2 billion in the last 2 years. $9.2 billion extra dollars.
In COVID relief, mostly.
Yeah, but that's 4 times more than an annual Metro budget. That's 7 times an Oracle deal.
Does your brother know that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I spoke to the Metro department heads last week on that. But that's an unheard of amount of money, because a lot of it was stimulus checks to individuals. $2.7 billion were in PPP loans. I was particularly proud that we got the shuttered venue things for music venues. That's very rare in congressional history to get a subset of an industry special help, but we got them $17 billion. All the restaurants in America got help. This is astonishing. So we would be in a depression if it weren't for that aid, and miraculously Congress responded in time. So this is a fantastic amount of help for Middle Tennesseans, for Nashvillians in particular, and we are going to get our fair share of the infrastructure money too.
Had these terrible tornadoes in this state, particularly up in Kentucky and several other states, you and the entire Tennessee delegation sent a letter to the president asking for immediate help. He's already responded in less than a day. Is this the kind of thing that will help the president? Because one of the things you hear in the polling is people thought he was bringing great experience to government, but they haven't been seeing that.
Not only did President Joe Biden respond instantly, faster than any president in history, because we are really in need. And it's not just in Kentucky. Remember, Kingston Springs was hit. There were several areas in Tennessee that we got hammered because those were vicious tornadoes. And I hope we're not seeing a permanent weather change here, but not only did President Biden respond instantly, he also said that it's going to be 100% federal grant for a long time. Normally it's a 75% grant. You have to match it with local money. But especially in Kentucky, they don't have any local money right now. So he's got to make it free. He's got to make the help immediate, because that's what you do, neighbor helping neighbor, government helping citizens.
Why does it seem that the only thing that unites the parties in Washington these days is some kind of big national disaster? I mean, we even got Rand Paul on board for these. He almost never supports those. Why is everything in Washington so politicized? Is it money?
Well, people want free publicity from TVs, and if you act out, if you embarrass yourself, oftentimes you get coverage. Now, you're right, Rand is a good example. Our neighboring senator from Kentucky never voted for any sort of emergency relief until Kentucky got hit, and then he suddenly changed his mind. He needs to be more empathetic of other nations of the country that get hammered.
In terms of dealing with inflation, the Federal Reserve this week announced it's ending its bond purchasing by March, and then later in the year there'll be at least 3 interest rates increases. Now, interest rates have been almost below zero for the last couple of years, but is this the way to go forward? The stock market didn't go down. Maybe they think it's a good idea too.
Well, I think most people are worried about inflation. We need to make sure that average families are able to afford their food and their gas and everything else so that they can have a decent life, because thank goodness wages are going up. And that's actually kind of a popular form of inflation, because most people want to make more money, but you don't want to have your pay increase eaten up by grocery costs and other costs. So I think the Fed is trying to manage this. It's been a struggle ever since the 2008. Remember, that was a near depression back then when the banks let us down on Wall Street and created this unnecessary problem. So the Fed has been stressed really since 2008, and overall the American economy has performed better than almost any economy in the world. Stock market is at record highs, but we got to make sure that average Tennesseans, average Americans are doing well. The
biggest uncertainty that remains in American politics and in American life is what's going to happen with the virus. We've seen some new predictions coming out for this winter, particularly with the new Omicron variant, that are kind of scary. What are you being told? What are people in Congress being told about how to deal with this, and how bad is it going to get this winter?
Well, I went to 3 Christmas parties last night, and I was the only person wearing a mask. I'm encouraging everybody to do this, because already in New York, Washington, people are masking up like crazy, because we do not need to see a spread of this virus. Apparently it's even more contagious than Delta. We don't know if it gets you as sick as Delta, but just if vast numbers get it, even those who are inoculated, we could be in trouble.
Congressman Jim Cooper is our guest on Inside Politics. Back to continue that conversation after you watch these messages.